Okay, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the E6 Sicilians, or at least a handful of them. And let's first take a look at the Taimanov. And as someone who played the Taimanov for the better part of 2 years, I gotta say that you have to have an excessively sharp memory to play the Taimanov because it's such a fluid opening that there are many different paths. I think there's the better part of like 8 different pawn structures that white can force on black that you have to know and understand to be able to play the Taimanov. It is not something I would recommend to someone who doesn't study opening theory all the time, as I would constantly get the lines confused, and I'm basically an opening psycho. So I would consider the Taimanov to be a professional opening. So what do I do? What do I recommend? What's the Beth move? Let's start with knight b5. Again, the most aggressive move in the position. And this move essentially forces d6. And then after bishop f4, black doesn't get the structure of a Taimanov at all, and yet we get back to this Kalashnikov or Sveshnikov pawn structure that we saw in the previous video. So it's going to have a little bit different flavor than the previous. Knight c3 defending the d-pawn. Okay, so now we need to deal with this threat. Pawn to b4, forking our knights. That won't do. So, knight d5. And we're not overly concerned with a move like knight takes e4 because bishop b6 followed by knight c7. That seems pretty problematic for black to deal with. So he needs to deal with the threat of piece to b6. So knight takes d5, and after knight e7, what side of the board should we be playing on? c4. Absolutely, you need to be pressing the edge on the queen side. Knight f5. So do we want to make this trade, knight for bishop? Can we allow knight takes e3? Well, it's an open position, and that should answer the question in and of itself. Bishop d2, we cannot allow that trade. After g6, let's go ahead and grab there. And now I really like this idea next. Bishop c3. Just completely solid, no room for discoveries. Best square for the bishop, handling our issues. Bishop e2, completing development. We're in no hurry to grab the b-pawn because we would like our knight on b5. And if we were to take on a6, it could develop his bishop and he could get some extra play there. Unnecessary. Good move by black, putting some pressure. Let's defend by castling. So black's threatening mate, nothing doing, simply stop it. And after bishop h6, pressure. Okay. We'll get our knight to a good square, threatening the d-pawn. And once we see f5, this is a critical moment in the evaluation of the position. They play f5 because they want the big attack. They want to play f4 and they want to crash through. How can we stop this plan? Do we get greedy and take the pawn, or do we kill his ideas and with it his hopes and dreams? I'll take option number 2. f4 ourselves. This shuts it down nicely. Absolutely kills it. Definitely don't want to grab the pawn. Simply take with the rook, and where's your knight going? It's not. So you have to run away, which allows this capture and the loss of the piece. So at this point, it is a mop-up job for white, seen in Jeu Mushed, chess.com 2020. So next line. Let's start with our Kan. And I'm a bit partial to bishop d3. I've also played the Kan Sicilian quite a lot. And let's first start with knight c6 here. And I think this falls under Palsen Sicilian. It's like the most solid of the Sicilians, I believe was the title of one book. And taking immediately has its merits. It is the main line because with a6 and e6 being played, It is the only time in basically open Sicilian theory you want to take on c6, because black can't really justify playing a6 if you've taken on c6, because he's going to have a pawn on c6 that's doing the job to protect b5, and you would rather have that a6 pawn move back for something else. But let's keep tension. Let's be aggressive. Let's be uncompromising. It's kind of the whole point in this series. Bishop e3. And on castles, only now are we going to take. And this is leaving black with some options. If he takes with the queen, we can definitely look into playing e5 and kicking pieces around. So he needs to take with one of the pawns. And when he takes with the b pawn, clearly d5 is coming. So we direct prophylaxis against this idea with c4. And all the tension in the world belongs to white. We've finished development, and black's king's still stuck in the middle. So what do we need to do? Let's crack this bad boy open. And I feel very good about white's chances in the long term here with the b pair in the open position. So let's come on back after bishop d3. What about bishop c5? And this time, unlike the last video, we're going to see the boss Magnus Carlsen on the receiving end of a thrashing by a very popular streamer, American, and at least one time, maybe two, U.S. champion, Hikaru Nakamura. Knight b3, queen e2, bishop e3 to directly play against the strong dark square bishop. Castles, and here comes the uncompromising. After we develop, getting ready, lining up on that weak d-pawn, you got your picturesque image. You've castled, you got your development. The d-rook's beautifully placed, x-raying the queen. Where are we attacking? Queen side? No. Center? This time it's the king side. f4. Get that space. e5 fights for it, but I love this. First, let's get rid of that. f5, getting some space. You never know if you want to go all out and do this kind of stuff. And d5 looks like a possibility, so shut that noise down. Rook's misplaced on d7 now. c4, trying to cement this. Love it. The a-pawn is now weak. Black's doing anything he can to fight for this center to get some play. But knight e7 leads to a really big problem. This is going to open up the king. King h1, no queen b6 check or any of that. So he's trying to get safe, but rook d3, where are the defenders of the black king? Okay, you can have the pawn, because the queen's coming over and this is getting nasty. Rook h3 is a big threat, and how do we defend the h-pawn? I mean, one, that's a big threat, and then two, immediately, queen takes f6 is a big threat. So knight g8 holds the f-pawn, but after rook g3, Carlsen threw in the towel here and resigned because we have queen g4 on the next move, leading to mate. I think knight h6 is one of those, you just take it, and then still that's going to be curtains pretty soon afterwards. So very, very dirty game. Now, coming back to bishop d3, let's take a look in this line with knight f6, if not frozen too long here. Okay, knight f6, castles. And this is our Kan Sicilian. And there are many ways to play. We could see that same kind of structure with queen e2, knight c3, bishop e3, and f4. And that's a very reasonable way to play. But I have something a little bit more uncompromising and aggressive in mind here. Let's go knight d2 to start with, because I like the idea of playing against key squares. So what we're going to see in playing against the key squares and what I'm talking about, after d6, let's go a4. And after after a4, we are eyeing that critical b6 square. And what's going to happen here is our knights, especially that knight on d2, he's looking to hop in at the right moment here. He's so supportive of this idea that we normally don't have. b5 has been played, c4, uncompromising, putting some serious pressure on this pawn, leading black to make a decision. And once e5 is played, that solid hedgehog structure is gone. White just seems more comfortable here. And these types of lines, which are non-standard, really gave me trouble when I was playing the Kan Sicilian because, oh crap, I'm not just an easy theory, I have to think here. And knight c2 happens, and then we see the problem again. We've talked about this pawn structure a few times now and use of the d5 square. So we see that we've gotten back to a very, very comfortable place. B takes c4, okay. The knight is deadly. Look at the b6 square now. Knight bd7, you can defend it, but okay. Pressure, pressure. Let's clip that one because if you take with a knight, I get the b6 square. And then look at all that control of the d5 square. Check. Didn't want to block with anything because his king's stuck there forever, but now the rook on h8's kind of silly. Every single one of white's pieces is coming in now, and the only real claim that black has in the position is the bishop pair. So what do? Take away the bishop pair in the open position. You got the rook lift, more pressure. Oh no, every single one of white's pieces is in full harmony. It's exactly what you want to see. And after bishop d8, clip, check, and nothing doing for black. So that will conclude the how I feel Beth Harmon would play the Sicilian. Uncompromising, interesting. So I really hope you enjoyed the series. Maybe we'll pick this back up in the future with going through some more, interesting, uncompromising, aggressive, and dynamic ways to face other defenses against e4.